Today I'm here with Alex. Once again, I'm at Harvard University, and Alex is a social chair who is at Hasty Pudding, which is the secret underground theatrical society of Harvard. He's somebody who's been active in the music industry, from building his own nightclub and from nightclub marketing to music making, as a rapper, as an artist. And he's somebody who has a very similar background in the sense that we both went to very famous boarding schools. He graduated from Exeter, went to Lawrenceville, then he went to Harvard, and now I'm at Harvard. And you know, he's an entrepreneur who also teaches people from the music industry how to build their own music. Anyway, I thought it'd be an awesome opportunity for us to hang out, talk,
yeah,
you know? Cheers. You know it. I use a lot of these interviews actually just to get to know people deeper, because it feels like when you're just socially hanging out, you get to know each other and you're having fun, you're joking around, but you know, when you kind of have like an interview or a chance to dive deeper, kind of got a chance for, I guess, both of us to kind of get to know each other better. It's kind of cool.
That's for sure.
You know? So I guess, yeah, I mean, I think what you're doing in terms of like helping business people in the music industry is kind of like the niche version of what I've been doing with my YouTube channel. Yeah. Just working on helping people that are from RSD Nation, and a lot of them are interested in terms of like building their business, building their brand, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I mean, I think that learning component, you know, or that rather the teaching component is so important because, I mean, as you probably know, you learn this generosity, right? I mean, that's a really great way to network. It's also a great way to just make some good friends and build out loyalty. I know that's something that's big for you. And I'm sure that there's a huge amount of satisfaction in knowing that there's somebody who's got a better life because you talked to them, because you spent some time with them. So
I believe it's also an epiphany for a lot of people, especially for someone like myself. I didn't really have like a really powerful social circle group of friends for much of my life. Yeah. You know, I mean, this was like a structure, like a classroom environment. You're forced to hang out with people. Boy Scouts, you're forced to hang out with people. Yeah. But it wasn't coming from this same sense of like values that I had to learn throughout my college years. And as a result, there's a lot of relationships I wish I developed deeper, especially from like my time in boarding school. Yeah. I just really didn't hook with a lot of people because I didn't really understand that mindset.
I was exactly the same, man. I actually only really stay in touch with maybe 2 or 3 people from boarding school. Technically probably just one. And it was interesting how easy it can be to start communicating and really connecting with people when you want to share something about yourself. I mean, and that's a question that I sort of had for you was, I've noticed in my experience that the people that are more vulnerable, the people that really are willing to share their stories, like the good and the bad, are the ones that really connect with others the most effectively, right? I mean, is that something that's been important to you?
Well, I think that there's something that I learned from Robert McKee. He says a lot of people will share vulnerabilities in Hollywood in a very different way than most people. People will share vulnerabilities because they want to, really like share those moments that they might be embarrassed about or ashamed about to build trust and value with people. And it does. It actually works like that. And also, it makes you more relatable and you can understand people better. And the funny thing is, in Hollywood, you do that because you understand that principle, and therefore you share that because it shows those elements to people and it makes you that person to that person, but it's like a tactic, And a lot of people will do that continually. Yeah. Now, in our world, in terms of RSD, we do that because we want to convince people who we are from our point of view and do it in the fastest way possible. And who you are as a person has the ups and downs. And by saying exactly what's on your mind, almost to the point of radical honesty. There's a book about that. Yeah. I was, something that we kind of naturally do a lot when you're your closest friends or with your family that you trust. Sure. And I think that by treating people with that kind of respect and communication, you're more likely going to build that trust fast. It's actually one of the things that also will help a lot of people in pretty much every aspect of your life, as long as you're tactful about not saying things that just are kind of off topic and random all the time. Like, yeah, and then
or
it
even
reminds
like,
me
yeah.
of, you know?
Or even like throwing it up on people in a way that's really
Exactly.
negative, where you think that by making them feel bad for you that you're connecting with them. That's certainly also not the point.
Yeah, calibration is something that people don't define a lot. They think it's an issue of this mystical term. You say, oh, just calibrate socially with other people. So what we've had to do is we had to break down a lot of what we teach in terms of, say, micro mannerisms. It's like try to empathize with the other person, relate to them, and then give them those things that you think will add value to them on an emotional and intellectual level, and do it with the power of story, humor, and how do you do that? Well, here's how you do it. Develop these conversational threads, multiple conversations, enrich your life, to build reference experiences, and let's do it in the field tonight, and that kind of thing. And so a lot of people just don't understand what that is. And so we actually will point out a lot of those things to people. But I mean, a lot of it has to be done from personal experience. So for ourselves, you know, a lot of it has been me wanting to socially experiment with things and push the limit of what I think can and cannot get accomplished, and see how far you can really push it. And that's something that I've always, you know, been fascinated by, the dynamics of social experiments. I didn't really have a lot of, say, social repertoire skills. You know, I guess, you know, I was watching people debate in debate class. I was always thinking that was like voodoo or magic. Like, how were they able to think off this? There's systems, there's constructs, and that's what I've been obsessed with, and that's why our company became Real Social Dynamics as opposed to day dynamics. I believe that these social constructs can help every aspect of people's lives.
You learn those rules, and then, you know, once you've really mastered it, you start breaking them. That's probably the point when people look at that and say, wow, that looks like magic. How's he just doing that?
Especially those random things that people don't usually have, like comedy, for example. You know, the understanding of callback humor and the breakdown of mixing various random ideas, combining them together, making conflict and clash. I mean, what is this angry art, and how do people actually make it fun? So I think that, yeah, I mean, it's something that people can break down in so many different directions, and we took the time to do that and learn that ourselves obsessively. But I do believe that this is the stuff that makes a great story, and also being a good storyteller helps you in not just the creation of business, but also in your relationships.
So I have a question for you about calibration, because you just mentioned that. You know, you start out with that personal form of calibration, telling your own story, but of course you guys have built up an entire community that has its own story, one that, you know, overlaps with all the individuals that are part of it. And now you're telling this story, you know, with a movie. You mentioned James Franco's making this movie, and of course this musical. And, you know, my question for you is, you know, how do you calibrate that story on a communal level and create something where, you know, you're really standing up for what, you know, you've mentioned before has been a very contentious subject, you know, the subject of pickup and its place in society. You know, we have a lot of extreme views on pickup and on, you know, feminism, this, that, and the other thing. So, you know, how do you design that story? Because I think there would be a design element there. It's going to be especially important for you guys.
First and foremost, though, we have to stick with our core values and what RC Nation cares about more than anything else, more than society, because no matter what the mainstream or the media or governments will say about anything that we do, or anyone will do, anyone who is an institution could judge anyone else, and they could have so much leverage and power. But if your core audience, and for R, we have a tribe. Our goal was to create a movement, and my business partner kind of was the mastermind of that, where my goal was to mastermind the business infrastructure. And the two together created the company. But our core values, what we teach, those principles, those are the things that we have to stick to more than anything else. So I mean, it's basically the concepts that allow the process of identity level change to happen. And because of that process of like learning how to free yourself from like what we call success barriers for dating, that same process can be used in other aspects of your life. That's why we're expanding into other niches, you know, from just dating to replicating infrastructure for like higher purpose, for business, health, that kind of stuff. And the reason why we're able to do that is because we stuck to these core principles, and there's a lot of them. I mean, if you go to our YouTube channels, every day of the week we have over an hour of content. We're able to do that because our guys are always innovating. They're traveling, teaching, meeting people all day. So it's like our marketing is like this much, which is basically nothing, And it's all word of mouth because we continually have free content out there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my goal in terms of sharing our narrative was just to get as much out there as possible.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, although our fan base will watch hours of content a week, the people that don't really know you will watch this much, which is like nothing.
Right.
Or like,
It
you know,
doesn't
a
really
minute.
get the point of the content.
Now, if you have something to captivate people, that's when I've been trying to control the narrative. I've been trying to control the narrative with something entertaining. So I wanted to focus on music. I wanted to focus on drama, theater, powerful emotions like love and glory,
Right.
and show how these powerful thematic universal truths have affected our lives so that other people could relate to us. Because unless they empathize with you as a character, you know, or as a human, your humanity, if your humanity is not understood by other people, you know, like I know Robert McKee says, if your humanity is not understood by other people, no one would care about what you say. You could show an advertisement or you could show your brand, or it doesn't matter. Now, our fans care about us because we've shown them and opened up to them that
Right.
truth, the vulnerabilities that you were talking about, and much more.
Yeah.
But other people don't care about it. So we have to do it in a way that they're willing to listen to. And once you could communicate with them at that level, then you could connect with people. Now your audience is growing. Now no matter what other people say about you, if they connected with you, empathize with you, they understand where you're coming from,
Yeah.
on a level that is catchy, entertaining, grabs them.
Yeah.
And you're doing it with what I would say is flair, finesse, and charisma, or music, or theater, or something like that. You can really connect with people and control that identity. I've seen people do that all the time. If you look at, say, our political government leaders, they do that all the time. They do that in the political theater arena. Celebrities do that in the entertainment world, and then they become, you know, CEOs, or they'll become famous artists, or and even other famous CEOs. Maybe they haven't necessarily done it in this world. Maybe they'll do it in the entertainment world with film. But I mean, you'll capture people. I mean, if you go to, say, our events nowadays, that's why nowadays we have to ramp up people's emotions to get them to pay attention.
Sure.
You'll go to our events, there'll be crowd surfing. There's not even music going. They're doing crowd surfing. They're chanting for each other.
Right.
But it'll be fun things like that. Other crazy interactive exercises that are taken from, you know, spiritual retreats or things like that. Or you go to the bar and club and you're doing outrageous things in addition to the regular exercise that we do in pickup to get people to get out of their head.
Right.
Because when they get out of their head, they become more coachable, more open-minded, because now it's just about fun. And when it's about the value of just entertainment, now there's not a risk. You're not putting yourself out there necessarily, it's just a learning.
Yeah.
And then you develop that identity as you change and you realize epiphanies.
I mean, it's fantastic because you clearly have, and this community clearly has such a strong identity and culture. And, you know, you told me your story a little bit earlier and we had a great conversation for like an hour. And of course, at the end of that conversation, I was completely sold. Although, I mean, I've, you know, looked into pickup quite a bit on my own. But, you know, my sense from that conversation was, you know, you get somebody in a room and they sit down and they listen for an hour, you've got them, right? And the interesting thing is, it seems to me that you have like mega super fans. You know, I use that term in sort of the marketing sense of it, the people who really represent you. And then you have non-fans, and what you're trying to do is take that space in the middle and find a way to make it more accessible to people that are just taking a peek.
Yeah, I mean, one of the epiphanies that I had was when I was in New York with my publicist, one of the most famous and powerful publicists on the planet. We paid him an epic amount of money to meet with us for a very few number of days because we're in a global crisis.
Right.
And he's represented the most powerful people in the world.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we were talking about is that our message was targeted at our audience. We didn't think that, you know, we were big enough for people to care. And the publicist said to me, well, the thing you got to realize is that when you look around this room, although these are not the people that are part of your customer list, they're not a part of RC Nation, not your fans, each and every one of these people's opinions matter and will affect you. Now, that won't happen if you're not on the radar. But at that point, you know, we did have millions of people following us, and it was only a matter of time that we were going to get the attention of all these people, governments, individuals in the public, and they affect policy, how other people react to you, whether you get support of things. So what we were doing was we made a mistake of having a lot of, you know, humor, like Joe Rogan, that was affecting the minds of people in a way that was only comedic.
Yeah.
But then we started getting quoted for our comedy, but people not realizing it wasn't
It was comedy.
just comedy. Yeah, you know? So it's all about context. And I think that for us, you know, so much of what the mainstream has to have is context. And so my goal as CEO of Real Social Dynamics is to help create context. And I'm trying to do that in a way that people actually listen. And that's through entertainment. And I also have a lot of fun with that. Because a lot of people don't realize that, you know, I create a creative company, creative business. A lot of people will think that the creative value of a business is always from just the artists. But there's a lot of creativity on the business side of things also. And you know, I definitely appreciate that artistic side because I was there. I was in the field with a lot of our guys practicing stuff. I got married and I got out of the field. But a lot of the creative elements that I've had to learn from my past has and still is here. I had a very artistic mother. She had a master's in fine arts. I have traveled around the world watching museums and theater from around the world. And you know, most of my background is from going through 2 MBA programs and then hotel school at Cornell and then spending $1 million and going to masterminds, you know, around the world and meeting business people. That's my primary focus. Now most of my focus has been hanging out with artists like yourself. And I have just as much fun. But it's because that's my focus, you know. I've kind of automated the systems for my business. And although I'm still tinkering with it, going to board meetings. I mean, I was at a board meeting yesterday or the day before yesterday, you know, and it's just...
It's maintenance at this point.
Yeah.
It gives you the space to really get creative with a new project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with you because this mentality that you have artists, I mean, you go back into history and artists, you know, they weren't paid very well. They were kind of this really subsection of society. And then suddenly you had this change where artists, you know, became rock stars and they became famous rappers and stuff. And now, you know, I see this as like the final stage where the arts is no longer separate from business and from creation. I mean, it never was, but I think that, you know, the economy really does reward people who are willing to be creative and who are willing to, you know, look at it as a gift that they can bestow on the people around them. I mean, there's a book I read called Lynchpins that was talking a lot about this. But I love the fact that you're willing to take a risk like that to say, look, you know, this project is essentially complete. You know, it's at a maintenance stage now. I'll keep doing it, but let's find a new way. Let's find an innovation that we can add to that and to make things better.
If you look at brands that have a story, that are kind of a commodity, like sunglasses, and you have a story that is like not only this sunglass company that every time you buy a pair of sunglasses or a pair of shoes, I'm going to double it up and give it to a child in Brazil or Africa.
Yeah.
Now people are more likely to feel that story, especially if there's a heartfelt story behind it that goes into more details. And not only that, like the founders saw these children, they cried, and there's an emotional response. Now it's called Tom's Shoes. And if you have that versus say a regular sunglass company that's selling the exact same shoes in China for $5 on the internet or something like that, you can sell it for much more money. Now you have a global organization. In the same way, you got to have that for pretty much anything else you sell. And that includes yourself. And I think that the understanding of the creative arts and the mindset of how people care about passion and what themes and values society cares about is definitely unignorable.
Right.
Now, each of us may have different views than other people. Some people will get extremely mad just for saying that you like something that Trump said. For example, I have a guy who is an advisor on a musical, and he said that he had a friend of 15 years. He said he liked Trump. Now he says he can never talk to him ever again.
Wow.
And they have opinions like that.
Yeah.
And other people have opinions about religion. Like if you curse. I have a friend who said he had another friend, he started cursing all the time. Now he can't talk to him anymore. And it's these things that people have to understand. But although these minute things, people have very differing opinions on.
Yeah.
Everyone do care about those core values that are very common in institutions of all kinds. For example, if you look at, say, the Muslim religion, the Christianity, Judaism or any other religion, they all have very similar values in terms of love and self-actualization and
even their own
core
version
values.
of Jesus, like the same exact story. If you look at it closely.
Well, and also the Messiah
Right.
also cares about very similar values.
Yeah.
Well, at least some of them have similar values. Like each Messiah cares about helping other people and building a movement that grows. And there's a reason why. It's because they believe in something that's a higher purpose than themselves. If you realize the deeper reason why people care about things, you can focus on those things, and that's what tells a story to help build a brand, and build a business, or build your own reputation. Now, if you look at things that are on surface, you won't get to it. So, I mean, if I asked somebody, what do you care about? And they say, oh, I care about creating, a company, but my family. And they go, oh, cool. Well, tell me about the company. Well, it's a company that does clothing. Like, okay, great. Well, what did you care about most about doing that? And he goes, well, I like fashion. It doesn't really tell you anything. Well, what got you into that desire for style and fashion? Like, why'd you want to get involved with that? He goes, well, I loved the creative arts and that process. I go, why did that even matter to you? Like, the creative arts is awesome. I'm creative. I think that's cool. He goes, well, when I was a kid, I used to go down to this, market, and I used to see this person that was creating, awesome art out of clothes and turning it into these fashion shows. And that creativity, innovation gave me like a way of looking at something that was beautiful and successful, and it gave me a desire to get, something that could get me out of this poor neighborhood I grew up in. And he goes, oh, cool. So basically all this is about freedom and freedom of choice and the ability to self-actualize to the point where you could travel and explore more cultures. And that whole fashion world and your passion is like deeper. Well, there's always like a deeper story, but there's a story that you're trying to get to behind people. Now, if you want to share that with people, people start to care. They don't care necessarily what you do.
I hope that guy wrote that down, by the way. Because he basically helped him create his entire brand right there. I hope he wrote it down.
The point I'm making is like, sometimes you have to suss it out of people.
Yeah.
And you do, and it's an amazing moment, but like they don't even realize how much, because like if you're able to suss that out of somebody, you're kind of providing a huge amount of value to them right there. You're helping them be more self-aware.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a lot of people, I think probably 99% of people in the world don't have the self-awareness to even understand how valuable that type of moment would be.
Well, yeah, people will come to our seminars and they expect to get one thing, and they get that plus they get other things. So, I mean, I had a guy who was a huge finance guy, made, $100-something million in assets under his control, and he was studying the art of telling stories with me in Hollywood with some of the powerful artists and screenwriters and producers for video games and movies and what have you. And I was talking to him about what he does every week, which was to go to this theater and tell his story. And every week it was a personal story, not about his business, but everyone just shares personal stories with each other. I go, so why are you here? Is it because you're just doing it for the theater? Or are you here because you want to get into the film and entertainment industry? He goes, neither. I go to the theater for the same reason why I'm here. I believe the art of captivating people, showing that you understand their humanity, is a great way to make connections and build personal and business relationships. That's the same reason why I came to Real Social Dynamics.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here with you today. And people kind of downplay that, in terms of how this could help. I mean, people will read fairy tales and they'll think it's just about trying to project morals. But the reason why fairy tales are successful is because they convey those specific parts of humanity that people naturally care about.
Yeah, I mean, I remember maybe 3 years ago I watched a TED Talk, and I was the marketing director of TED Harvard College for a year, so I got to talk to a few of these old speakers. Simon Sinek, who to me is kind of like a Gary Vee type. I mean, he has a lot to say about humanity and business and connecting with people and leading. There was this particular talk called Start With Why, and then he later wrote an entire book about it, which I absolutely loved. I mean, it was so simple. He draw the 3 circles. The wider one was the what do we do? The one in the middle was how we do it, and then the one in the center was why we do it. And he said, most businesses, they start with what we do. We make computers. And then they might understand how we do it. We make really good computers, and we work with these distributors or whatever. But the ones that really connect with their audience are the ones that start with why. Apple doesn't say, we're a computer company, we make this really expensive, pretty good computer, do you want to buy one? They say, here at Apple, we believe in, breaking the status quo. We believe in innovation on all fronts, and we do that by creating really great tech products. And of course, now you obviously are more likely to buy one. That's kind of his point. But I sort of sense a similar trend here with you. And not just on an individual level, but throughout your entire business, throughout all the things you're doing, and with the people that you surround yourself with, which I think is in itself a fantastic thing, because that's what life's about. It's who are you surrounding yourself with, and are they making you better people? Are you exploring your values and your humanity more deeply, or are you not?
And every single day, people will hit the field, go out to bars and clubs, approach girls, and they'll learn more about humanity based upon how people interact with what they say.
Yeah.
And in marketing, it's just as important. So for us, we used to spend $7,500 a weekend with a guy named John Carlton who wrote Sales Letter Marketing. He would talk about the way to break it down, where you establish authority, talk about your story after you establish where you actually were to make it, so people can understand your background, they can relate to you. Then you go into the features and benefits. The features are what the product or service you're selling is, and the benefit of how it helps them. You break it down, you sum it up, and you close. I used to train our sales team about the details of that process. And the thing about that people will skip is they'll create the authority, and they'll do everything else, but they won't create that story. And the story is important because then you can relate to people. Because if you talk to those successful enterprise salespeople,
right,
their main sales thing isn't trying to close a deal with someone on the phone. It's a very complex product. Sometimes they might have a CRM system or some other kind of innovative service that could not be just explained on a website. You kind of get to know what it is, and it takes multiple sessions and meetings of technical directors. You're spending big money, and even on a smaller scale, if you could do this process of relationship building with like these enterprise level people who invite you to a basketball game, they'll try to get to know you and explain their story through understanding who these people are. You can trust their story and what have you. It's powerful. I mean, one of the things we started doing was this program where you go undercover as sales reps in organizations. One of them was a real estate company.
Okay. They
are selling advertising. So what we would do is we would approach presidents of multinational real estate companies as undercover sales reps for their organization, just like pickup. We'd go up to these people, wing with them, and try to build rapport, build stories, build conversational sets, and then invite them to have lunch at the Ritz-Carlton, where you would then proceed to try to sell them on an advertising contract. But for them to even want to have lunch with you, you got to connect with these people. Very, very busy people. So you got to captivate them with, obviously, not just your story, but also the product. You can't just have one or the other. You got to have both.
Right.
But it's also, you don't ignore one and the other. If you just like, I had this awesome product, that's cool. You can tell a story of the product and why you're trying to do it, and also how it's helped people. But you got to captivate people. And that captivating of people, what people call charisma, is that process of relating to people's humanity and kind of ramping up the emotions around what you're doing quickly.
Which is, I think, a lot of people can do it in a moderate amount of time, but do it in 90 seconds, which sometimes that's what people are willing to give at first, right? I mean, you either get their attention or they walk away. I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, I mean, the joke I have with the people on my music team while they network with Hollywood's elite is that when they walk up to Elton John or Jonah Hill and they just get blown off because they're trying to pitch them on getting them involved in the project. The joke is that, dude, you made a mistake. All you had to do was tell them hot chicks and free weed. But the thing is, you got to captivate them on an emotional level. No matter what that is.
There's a lot of creativity there, man. I remember when I took a year off, from Harvard, and my first experience working during that year off was sales. And I used to, go to like the hotel bars and, talk to like 30-year-old women, because that's the type of person that goes to hotel bars in Boston. But that was actually around the time that I started looking a little bit at, pickup. I actually did watch a couple of videos from RST. This was probably 2012, 2013. But you had mentioned in our earlier conversation that there's this huge link, between sales and between pickup. And of course, your website, doesn't say, hey, we're just training pickup artists. It talks about relationships and business and everything in between. So, my question for you is like, what was the trajectory? Did you started with dating, I'm guessing, and then you started transitioning into business. So how did you decide, okay, let's talk to people about how these skills can transition outside of the personal and into a more businessy environment?
From day one, we called ourselves Real Social Dynamics, and the expectation we would eventually do that.
Yeah.
And our entire curriculum was built that way. What got us to actually pull the trigger was that clients started contacting us from major tech corporations on the Fortune 500 to small businesses to companies that are in risky businesses, everything from porn to risky entertainment to technology, real estate, and conservative financial institutions. And they were saying, hey, what you're teaching here is interesting. We'd love for you to do a presentation for our company about this stuff, how to approach anyone for any reason, anywhere to get a certain kind of positive result connecting with people. And we started teaching that stuff. Then we started holding events called the World Summit. Typically, it would just be our instructors. Then we started inviting professionals, celebrities from the health and fitness world, celebrities in the higher self and higher purpose, and then also people that were masters at making certain elements and niches of business work, whether it was business mindsets, networking, sales. And they would parallel a lot of the skills that we were teaching in terms of pickup, and they would come speak at our event, the RSC World Summit in Vegas, which is like in August every single year. Then we started getting these people involved with our other events, like our Miami Summit that takes place in February. And I decided to launch a program that was called RSC Founders Club, where you're paralleling what we did. It was like a video membership site with several dozen hours of video and turned into like YouTube videos. And then other instructors who were already releasing products about inner belief systems and the power of it was trying to parallel that to how it could work in your daily life and your lifestyle. So it kind of was like a natural progression. It wasn't necessarily like a tactical thing. It was more just like our client base saw what we were teaching worked. It was offering value, and then they kind of just said, hey, give us more of this stuff. And it's something that we wanted to do from the very beginning. It's just that we knew that people were focused so much on coming to us for the pickup element because that was the flashy thing that people weren't touching. And that allowed us to break into these other elements of self-improvement and higher purpose with the principle, though, still. The reason why there's real as the first word in our trademark is because we're focused on actually doing it with them in the real world, real results that we really do with you, as opposed to people just preaching it like armchair professors that are not really doing anything other than academic research.
So I have one prepared question for you.
Okay.
And that question is, well, actually I have two. The first one is, what is pickup not?
Well, most people will get pickup wrong. They'll think that pickup is trying to get something out of the other person. It's like a value leech kind of mentality.
Right.
But pickup is about trying to create a situation that you're trying to elevate the other person's situation. It's like the girl, trying to create a situation where we're offering them value. That higher value is what we call it in terms of our community, and getting them to want to do the same with you. Whether it's the power of teaching them, sharing them, giving them entertainment or connection, emotional connection. Since back, you get intimacy, sex, a relationship of some kind. That's what pickup's about. Other people are trying to get pickup. They think it's this thing where you're trying to convince the girl that you're something that they want. That's not necessarily you. Right. And you got to understand your core values and project that, your story, kind of project that. Right. That's the key. And that's also because that common misconception is actually propagated by mainstream movies and the media. Beliefs that you have to have money, power, and good looks And if you don't have all of the above, you're not going to get a high quality girl.
Yeah.
These false beliefs are just shoved down the throats of society. And you have to kill that, because getting success with picking up girls is the one thing you can do when you don't have good looks, money, and power. Of course, when you have style, swag, and you're a cool guy and you have success, you're more likely to be the kind of person that attracts other people, because how we define pickup and gaming girls is you're basically using the rhythms of your interaction to lead that interaction to get a positive result for both of you. Now, when we say rhythms, we're talking about not just like monotone conversation. It's energy that goes up and down through emotional tone to your voice. And you're leading and guiding. And that's also like how you convey it. So I mean, there's different kinds of rapport. You're like trying to get rapport, like, hey, what's up? How's it going? I'd love to help you out here. There's breaking rapport. It's like, nah, I'm not willing to do that kind of thing. I have some boundaries here and that kind of stuff. And you're showing a broad range, and you're not just one kind of person or the other.
Right.
And you're using that rhythm because rhythm is what shows that you're real. And then you have to understand how to lead a conversation, guide. So I mean, the people that I work with always advise them to read books like Influence, The Power of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, because it talks about how to build yes ladders, how to guide people to guiding principles, like what persuasion, influence, and communication is, so that you can lead people using positive emotions, and then using also the right times when you should establish boundaries and things like that. I mean, we talk a lot about this in a program called The Blueprint Decoded as well. But these are how we define game. It's a complete opposite of what most people who are not following RC Nation would follow. And that's where a lot of the epiphany is. A lot of people will follow pickup because it's an epiphany. A lot of people won't follow pickup and they'll despise, oh, how can you even be in the pickup artist industry? What are you trying to learn how to pick up girls? It's because the ego will get involved. That's one thing. They'll believe that there's value as a human is their value and success and skills of the girls. So they talk about it, they don't have it, they are losing it. The second one is the negative stigma of people that have wrongly tried to educate people about what it is to get success in terms of pickup. And so most people will say, oh, I can't be game, I can't be played, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's just because that's how it is being defined by society in the wrong way.
You know, one thing that fascinates me is that, I was a sociology major, so I looked at was like values and like how they're formed over history. We talk about the American dream. And, recently people have pointed out, well, the American dream is actually not that alive and well in America. It's probably better off in like Belgium or something. And what I mean by that is this idea of going from a low place to a high place, finding success and, growing, whether that be as financially as an individual. And it almost seems to me that there's a negative stigma around changing. You're supposed to be who you're supposed to be. And the idea of improving, if you don't, as you said, you're supposed to have money, fame, and or power, and that's what gets you girls. And the idea of being able to get girls when you don't have those things, there's something somehow wrong with that. And I'm wondering if that's something that you agree with, if that's something you sense as well, that there's something that's inherently wrong, or people believe there's something inherently wrong with improvement, with self-improvement.
I believe that people that have hurt themselves, have given up on life, these people would be saved if they do one of two things. One is they travel around the world and they expose themselves to new cultures. Two is they just go to a hip-hop dance class, have fun, and realize that life's a happy place. I think that if you focus on the things that are really powerful in life, like understanding other cultures, understanding what's going on out there that could inspire yourself, you'll transform into a different person. A lot of people are stuck in old mentalities because they don't have any other reference point than what's being shoved down their throat. So very intelligent, successful people, people that I've met that are professors at Harvard, or people that are CEOs of companies, they have a narrow view because they haven't exposed themselves to things outside of their comfort zone. So when I advise people to go through the process of identity level change, I tell them to do things they never considered doing before. And unless you're willing to do that, I mean, I'm taking lessons on rap. I'm taking hip hop dance classes where I'm the oldest person in the classroom. I'm going to random cities that people haven't heard of and countries people haven't heard of, learning about cultures in a very unusual way. I'll go to Algiers in Algeria, and I'll go hang out in the Casbah, meet a carpenter, and then have lunch with him at his home with his family.
That's great.
I'll just do things like this because it inspires things that you might not have thought of.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I could tell from your story that you have such, I mean, from the standpoint of maybe somebody who doesn't have the habit of trying new things, you have this ridiculously illustrious life behind you and probably ahead of you, right? That seems to be just a result of building the habit of trying new things and of taking the risk. So I really love that. You know?
Yeah, I've always put everything on the line, like all the time. As an entrepreneur, I'm that kind of mindset. I also think it's very risky. And I tell most people, do not consider becoming an entrepreneur because of that. Become entrepreneurial. Have that creative risk-taking thing. But don't have to go all in every day. I do it. I do it because I believe very deeply in the power of the people that I work with. I've established a powerful team. And without them, I would never take any of the risks that I'm taking other than a milder version of what I'm trying to do. And as a result, you got to have the right people. And the more powerful and strong, interconnected the intelligence of the people and team you have, the better. I mean, if you look at a VC, someone will have an idea. But they don't invest in the idea, they invest in the people. Every project's like that. And that's why it's so important to get the right people in your soul circle and spend more time with those people that elevate you, and lower the amount of time you spend with people that don't, unless you're just there to help those people and you're inspired by that process. But make sure you have both. If you're focusing on trying to help people in the communities, especially underprivileged neighborhoods, I think that's great. But if you're just hanging out with people that they have a healthy financial situation, they always just try to bring other people down, you're just trying to change them. Sure. Realize that people have to make the choice themselves to make that change, and you can't force it down them. Everyone has to make the decision to help themselves. You can't help them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that brings me to my last question. I mean, which was going to be, let's say you have a person who probably could do with some reformation in their life, right? Especially, let's say, as like a risk taker or somebody who's willing to be entrepreneurial. What advice would you give them? What are the first few steps that they could take to move towards that goal of being more open, having some better experiences, maybe being a happier person?
Role model. You got to be that person yourself. And if you're that person, they see the transformations in your life, they're more likely to follow your authority. If you don't, they won't listen to you. Now, you got to inspire people. You can't force people to do it. I almost put my foot in my mouth when I said you can't help people. You could inspire people, but you got to be that person, and you're not helping them directly. It's an indirect result of you helping yourself.
So then I suppose the flip would be, to that person, they need to find a role model. That would be a great way for them to break.
You could do that. I mean, one of the things that I found valuable to help people that has really transformed people is I bought people like my brother-in-law or other friends and family real social dynamics programs. And
I've
you
didn't even ask, you just did it and said
I would hide it in the sense that I'm going to send you to Europe, and when you get there, you're going to attend a real social dynamics program.
How funny!
Because I have to still pay for my staff.
Yeah, that's
that.
Great.
But at the same time, that's not the only program you could do. You could buy them books. Our mutual friend Jalen, what inspired him was that a girl saw him when he was homeless, gave him a book about how you could transform your life, and that inspired him to become a more positive thinker.
I didn't know that.
And that positive thinking made him go from the grumpy, angry guy working at Bubba Gump as a homeless guy, living on a park bench, to suddenly rapping and playing with pots and pans on drums and everyone laughing. And then people started to like him and the coworkers. He had no friends in the coworkers. None of them would ever want to hang out with him. And out of nowhere, he had an epiphany that if you're a positive person, life will just attract things to you. And as a result, one day, one guy said, "You're such a great entertainer. You should audition for this. I don't know what it's about, but it's an audition in the entertainment world. It says there's rapping. I hear you rap in the kitchen." And that opened up the door for him to try out. He got the audition.
Yeah.
And then he created this epic music career with some of the most famous musicians in the world.
That's true. It's an amazing story. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that you've come across many like that.
Yeah, you know, people will, including myself, will say luck and hard work is what gets you success.
Luck and preparedness for that luck.
Yeah, I mean, I say that a lot. At the same time, one of the missing elements is that it's about speed of execution on awesome things that you're working on and doing it in a way where you leverage your time with the right team. And there's a lot of insights behind this. I mean, you know, I have friends who will go off and say all these witty little epiphanies like knowledge is power. And the other guy will say, no, actionable knowledge is power. And then the other guy will say this other thing. I mean, you know, everything is true. You just kind of have to like take all the knowledge you'll learn from videos like this, put it together and just apply it. Yeah. And just kind of just learn on your own. And that's why I say, you know, you can't just help people. They kind of have to do it on their own because they have to go in the field and do it. Now, what we do, like in a boot camp, we'll take guys out into bars and clubs and actually do it with them because number one, forcing them to do it. But even to get them to do that, they have to agree to be willing to do that with you. Yeah. And that's where the challenge is to motivate your peers. I made a whole video about how to motivate your peers for like an hour just on that one topic because it's something that people really care about. Everyone has a family member that they think is a little bit too deadbeat or needs a little bit of inspiration. Yeah. When they have friends who do the same thing or people that they don't like seeing down. Everyone naturally wants to help people when you have your shit together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've noticed that there's a huge difference between trying to teach somebody from a place of generosity and having your ego get in the way. I mean, obviously, I tell my brother all the time, you got to do this, you got to do that. But oftentimes, it's because I know that I don't do that thing, or because I've made that mistake in the past, or so. Whenever I come from that point of view, it never goes well.
Projection of your shortcomings is something that people oftentimes do, even when they talk about other people. So if I hear someone saying, I really like what this guy is doing because his point of view on life is so positive and happy and this and that, but what they're really just projecting is that's how they view life. And the same goes on the contrary. Mm-hmm. And when I hear people talk, I look for these kind of social cues. Yeah. Because it's what's on your mind. You project to the other people in the world. Sure. I mean, we say also in terms of a game, I gave you a definition of game. One of the things I missed was game is a projection of your inner state using the rhythms to guide interaction of conversation. And when we say inner state, that's like your inner belief systems, your mindsets, how you view the world, your emotional control. And that's a very important element of game. And game, in a sense, is not just for gaming in terms of girls, but in the business world and everything else in life. Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. Write your comments below. I'd love to have your questions featured in the future. So if you're interested in doing an interview as well, please also write that. Cheers.